Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. The aim of Let the Quran Speak is to help you gain deeper insights into Muslims and Islam, as it is practiced here and in other parts of the world. In this episode, honoring mothers. In many parts of the world, we celebrate Mother's Day, honoring mothers and their sacrifices and contributions to the family. Do Muslims also hold mothers in high esteem? We'll answer that question a bit later in the show. But first, the limits of science. Science is one of the greatest intellectual achievements of humanity, and yet it often seems to be in conflict with religion. How should religious believers view science, and how should scientists view religion? What is the relationship between religion and science? Does science tell all? And is religion still relevant in the age of science? With me to answer those questions, Dr. Shabir Ally, President of the Islamic Information Center. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
Now, what is the relationship between science and religion? In the past, some scientists have said it's one of conflict, that religion and science contradict, they're completely different, and they don't have any relationship with each other.
That idea that there's a conflict between religion and science has actually been overplayed. In ancient societies, people did not make a firm distinction between religion and science because the thinking was integrated. And then over time, all areas of knowledge became highly specialized, pursuing their own methods and going deeper into their respective areas of study. And so science emerged as a distinctive field of inquiry with its own internal rules. Mm-hmm. And this has set it off as something very distinctive from religious thinking. In scientific thinking, we do not claim things as facts. We make some observations, we form hypotheses, we test those hypotheses by conducting experiments in controlled environments, and if the experiments, which were calculated to, in a way, try to disprove the hypothesis, does not succeed in disproving the hypothesis, well then the hypothesis remains. And if many such subsequent experiments again fail to disprove the hypothesis rises to the level of a theory. Mm-hmm. And sometimes later on a theory is disproved, and if it's not disproved, then eventually it comes to be held widely as an undisputed theory. But then it remains on the level of theory. It is not asserted as fact. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, religious belief tends to assert facts, and usually without the kind of physical evidence we expect in the sciences. The religious fact may be held to and believed in based on a certain gut feeling or instinct, or a personal revelation that one feels, or inspiration that one feels from God.
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by fact? Because many people would not, talk about religion and fact in the same sort of sentence.
If by fact we mean the kinds of verifiable facts as we have emerging from the inquiry into the natural sciences or into history or archaeology or something like this, then no, in religion we wouldn't speak of them as being facts, mm-hmm. but we wouldn't speak of religious belief as being facts in the same way. But for a believer, the assertions of faith are equally factual, as are the discoveries in other fields. So when a believer says, for example, that there is only one God, that is asserted as a fact and believed in as a fact, without requiring the kinds of proofs that the facts of science are established by. So this is an entirely different field of inquiry. It is based on spirituality and in revelation from God and in a relationship with God. It deals with metaphysical things, which are not the subject of science the subject of study in the physical sciences. Mm-hmm.
So this would be, I guess, one of the limits of science. Then it cannot deal with metaphysical supernatural sorts of things.
Yes, and that should not be said to mean that something is wrong with science. In fact, science is great as it is, and it is great for what it does, specifically because it limits itself to a specific field of inquiry in which it can function very well, given its methods. It cannot deal with soul or life after death or the existence of God.
So we can't answer the questions, for example, why are we here? What is our purpose in life? That sort of thing.
No.
That would be
Questions about...
those are questions that religion would answer.
True. Questions about the purpose of our existence, our future existence outside of this physical world, and even the purpose for which we are created. And to add to that, and very importantly so, science cannot make statements about what's right and what's wrong. Even
Can't make moral judgments.
Cannot make moral judgments. You cannot go from the is to ought. Science can only describe what is and how things function, but cannot tell us what ought to be the case. Or
But science can help us to make certain judgments.
it can help us to understand the consequences of some of our actions, so far as those consequences affect physical results. But science cannot tell us anything about supernatural consequences or consequences of a metaphysical nature. For example, if our actions in this world can have consequences in a life outside of our physical realm, in the life hereafter. Science cannot rule on these things. So it would be clear then from this discussion that one needs both science and religion. A religious person believing in God, believing in the existence of a human soul, believing in the life after death, still needs science, because science gives us so many benefits. It is to science that we owe technological advancements, medical cures, and everything that we enjoy in life.
Do you think it's possible for belief in God to give you a sort of framework to understand and appreciate science then?
Yes, even for the purpose of pursuing science. You see, a lot is taken for granted without the credit being given to a religious framework of thinking. People think, oh, this is a modern age, we just throw off the yoke of religion and we just depend on science. But even the idea of pursuing science actually depends on a basic presupposition that this is a worthwhile activity, and that life itself is worthwhile. But science itself cannot tell us that life is worthwhile, and that even the pursuit of science is a worthwhile activity. To say that any activity is worthwhile or worthless, this is a value judgment, and that judgment cannot come from within the study of science itself. It comes from something else, either a religious presupposition or a philosophical background. It's outside of the realms of science.
Do you think Islam is unique in its relationship and appreciation of science?
In my study of the world's religions, I have this sense that Islam has this unique relationship with science, in that whereas many other religions are plagued by the fact that they depend on very ancient scriptures, the Quranic scripture is relatively new, such that Muslims to this day can have the confidence that they are depending on a scripture that is a revelation from God. Second, many of the ancient scriptures make statements of a bold nature, describing physical phenomena, but in a mistaken manner. And sometimes very key doctrines of faith are based on a pre-scientific supposition of the cosmos. And because science now basically has overturned those ideas of the cosmos, for example, how the world works in relationship to the rest of the universe, the Earth in relation to the sun, the origin of human life, and so on, because science has revised so much of our thinking in all of these respects, if a key component of religious belief is based on the pre-scientific worldview, well then that belief itself becomes questionable in modern times. Whereas from what I understand to be Islam is a set of beliefs and principles that transcends the pre-scientific worldview. Of course, the Quran was communicated 1400 years ago and had to speak in a way that would be understandable to the people to whom the message was first addressed. Yet, the Quranic language is such that A modern person can read the same words of the Quran and see that the Quran actually fits in very well with our modern scientific worldview.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Brother Shabir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break when we return, honoring mothers.